everyone, and welcome to ITHICS. It's the hope I can't stand, and the hope we couldn't stand this weekend was Sunderland losing 1-0 against Fulham. I'm joined by my good friend Taff, AltEnding, and your big question of the week is: how many goals would Wilson Isidore have scored in the Championship this season with Sunderland if we didn't go up?
Yeah, you've caught me again there. You said you
Yeah,
were going to do this. How many would he have scored?
yeah.
I have heard a line of argument from people that says that he is more suited to the Premier League because of VAR and protection and pace in behind, and they just sit a bit deeper, so he can't run onto it. I have heard that argument. I'm not convinced I buy it. How many would he score in the Championship full season? A dozen? No,
Do you
he'd
reckon?
score more than that. No, he'd score more than
How
that.
many did you get last season?
He'd score more than that.
Did you get
46 games?
how many? How many did you get last season though? Like 13 or something, 14.
Yeah, he'd score more than that. You'd have to think, what would he score an average of? Would he score half the games? 23? I think he'd score maybe 19? Let's say 18.
18. Okay, just for his
That's my
squad
guess.
number as well. Happy days.
Yes, that was a fluke.
Yeah. Well, if you want to answer the question of the week, let us know in the comments how many goals you think Wilson Isidore would have scored in the Championship this season. And I wonder how many weeks it'll take for you to expect the question of the week. Many, I would guess. Right, anyway,
I think so.
Fulham game. The place to start for me is, and we're going to talk about the 4 at the back, 5 at the back, but I want to start with why did it go wrong? So there we go. This is your chance to have your monologue. I'll end, and I'll just sit back here. I've got the Man United game in the background. You just have yourself a nice little rant about why did this game go wrong.
I might throw the odd question your way. Do you think that's correct or not? You've got to share the run sheet with me as well, because after I stop speaking, I don't know what we're doing.
This is fine. Well, literally, I've only wrote down for this. Why did it go wrong? And let's talk
Why
tactics.
did it go wrong?
So-
Well, I have a number of reasons why it went wrong. It may not surprise you, and that they could all be absolute fiction and fantasy. I guess that's what the people in the comments are here for. But feel free to say that's a load of if you think so. I thought, and I don't know if you agree, but I thought that we set up completely wrongly. I'm not going to dig you out for your 5 at the back, because I know that that's a situational 5 at the back for you. I know it's not at every time.
I was about to speak up there straight away and be like, no, you're not throwing this at me. My 5 at the back is for Chelsea away and Arsenal.
I know that. Were you expecting me to have a go?
No.
I know it's a situational one. And I but you also know that I don't like the 5 at the back. However, I think you're right about Chelsea and Arsenal. I think in teams that come onto you straight through the middle of the park and have a lot of possession and look for those half space, I think it works very well. But I really, playing a team that is so fragile, and we spoke about it last week. A new manager who's probably not staying, and the concerns of the team members. If we score early, they're so fragile coming off so many defeats. They'd only beaten Wolves in the last 5 or something. And I just think there was a real opportunity to take the game to them, and we ducked out of that. We just offered them the game. We spoke last week also about them being really good down the flanks and being one of the biggest crossing sides. And so we did we sat deep and we gave them the flanks, which is kind of okay if you put faith in yourselves to defend strongly. And to be fair, we did. We'll come to the goal in a minute. I think that's unfortunate. And we did defend strongly. We won most of our duels in the air, 55% or something like that. We were pretty, reasonably dominant, but not entirely. And I just think that it was the wrong setup. We shouldn't be playing 5 at the back against a team that might be fragile. I mean, I think there'll be some angry people if he does that at the weekend against Bournemouth, who are a more dangerous side, I would have to say. But going to Fulham, fragile, bottom 6, and playing 5 at the back and offering them that, it was terrible. And it was weighed worse by the conditions, in my opinion, because it was pelting down with rain. When you play those 5 at the back and you sit deep, Hume folds into midfield, right? But most of the time, you lack a bit of creativity, so you're playing it long. Wilson to run onto balls over the top and in behind. But there was no chance he was ever going to get on the end of anything, because as soon as it hit the ground, it's 100 miles away off the water and the surface. So you're just not going to get any of that. And what we saw against Chelsea, of people like Traudo or Ballard coming into midfield, and Xhaka finding himself up in the 10 position, none of that ever took place. The conditions were miserable. We ended up sitting back, and we had a miserable 4 shots all game against a team that we really should have been on the front foot again. We gifted them well over 20 shots. So I think very defensive, very negative setup. The conditions added to the fact that we were always going to struggle from things like that. And I do have something very special to show you about putting Hume in the midfield, but I don't know if you want me to pause there to add.
Well, I have a couple of things that I want to add to this. So, one, I want to get your sort of thoughts on what's that you're drinking there? Is it Coke or is it wine?
Coke.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was like a Steve Bruce size glass of wine.
If it was, I'd have to have a pie as well, I think.
No, I want to ask if there's any validity to this sort of theory that I've got, that we, coming from an international break, we probably would have seen most of our players back in training by Thursday, I would say, Wednesday, Thursday. Then, because we've got an away trip in London on Saturday, we probably didn't really see any time on the grass as a team before this game. And also, you have the issue of, say, a player like, I don't know, he didn't play, but Alderete, actually, he was suspended, wasn't he? So he came back earlier. But, players that we've got who are internationals who are in the side would have had to have travelled around the world, then into Sunderland, to then travel to London by plane, not sleep in their own bed. Is there any validity to us, being dealt a pretty bad hand by having to play a London game after the international break? And do you think that has any sort of bearing in why he didn't change it and go to 4 at the back? Because he probably thought, we haven't had the time to put this.
Yeah. Yes and no. I know that's a terrible answer, but look, people being tired, people coming back, people not having the chance to train. I don't really buy that argument. We had pretty much all of our backline and our goalkeeper. We had Lefay, and we had Isidore. We could have, and I'm sure they train like this because there have been plenty of games this season where we haven't played with 5 at the back, so it shouldn't be too difficult to come into that. But Regis is a meticulous planner, so I do think that it's a much safer prospect for Bris to say, look, we don't have time to go through the specifics of the space of their team, etc., etc. We don't have time for that. We've done well with this last 3 games. Let's just stick with it 4th game in a row. I am prepared to accept that from him, providing we're not doing that against Bournemouth again. Otherwise, it makes a lie out of that situation, and it becomes a positive choice for him. So I'm prepared to accept that that's the case. He's a cautious guy, and that would be a cautious thing to do. But Fulham had just as many people out. They had, Harry Wilson, I know he played domestically, but he played 2 internationals that week. And Sander Berge played 2 in their midfield. He played 2 for Norway that week. Iwobi went to Nigeria and played 2 games as well, playing 110 minutes in one of those games. Calvin Bassey played in both those games as well. So they have just as many people flying around the world, coming back tired on international duty as we do. So I don't buy the tiredness, Mark. I'm quite happy to accept look, in terms of stability and caution, let's stick with what we've done well with the last couple of weeks. However, Fulham didn't do that. They get 1 more day at home. But I think it goes to show what a good manager Silva is and why they're really keen to keep him. So, I can show you that in a minute, if you like, about what it is that they did. And I just think if they are able, with lots of people playing lots of minutes across the globe, to come up with an idea that exploits something against us, then maybe Regis was a bit too cautious. But I don't necessarily blame him. These things happen, and it did. If you present that choice to us, it does seem like the safest thing to do, given the time that we had to prepare.
I would say though that having 1 day extra doesn't sound like much, but it is a lot when you compare basically 1 day extra to having basically no days really to prepare for the game as a squad. So I don't know. I think that for me, it's hard to have to come from an international break and play an away game in in London compared
Yeah.
to say if you're West Ham having to go to Bournemouth or you're Brentford having to go to Brighton or even if you're Man City having to go to Newcastle. Like those trips are not as big as Sunderland going to London. London, that's obviously a far greater journey. You probably have to go the night before. Well, you would have to go the night before. I think there is validity in the fixture list not necessarily being kind, so to speak. Do you want to show us Fulham? Go on. Let's have a look. Why were Fulham able to?
Well, I will do. I would like you to just pop that pass network up there. So this is our pass network. And what I want you to notice about this to begin with is the shape of our team. So everything's relatively connected except for 20, 32 and 25 up the top right. That's Mukiele, Hume and Traore. Now, these are sort of pass networks and average positions. And I think what is really quite evident here is the gap between the rest of the team and those three. And I think that there is a reason for this, because with Hume, 32, folding into midfield and Nordy coming across, this is all fine in possession. It does lack creativity because you have a midfield of Hume, Siddiqui and Xhaka, none of which are particularly pacey, none of which particularly drive forward with the ball, although Siddiqui did a couple of times. Although I think he could let fire with a shot a bit more than he does. But none of them are particularly pacey. And I think I've heard people talk about it. I think it's true to say that we miss the sort of complementary nature of Habib Diarra, who would pick the ball up and drive, or somebody else in that position as well. Lefay has a bit of guile, but no pace out on the left. Traore has pace, but can't hold on to the ball and has no physique. I mean, you just look at the midfield that we're playing with there, including there's 5 of them there pushing Hume up, and we don't really lack. We really lack, genuine creativity and drive to push Fulham back. So I think that's the first problem. Now, if Hume is up there and Mukiele is moving round, this is why we end up with this sort of advanced pass network. But there is then an enormous gap in between them and the rest of the team. And if you put the second one up there, you'll see I'll just highlight this gap here. And the reason this gap here exists is because of what we do when we transition from having the ball up the field and Hume being in midfield to pulling back into a defensive position when they win the ball. When they win the ball and we pull back into defensive midfield, Mukiele dashes back into centre half and Hume dashes back into right back. And so what happens from an advanced position is they just exit the entire middle of the park, and it's gifted to Fulham to come into that space. And if you have a look at Fulham's pass network, which I'll just put up there.
Can I just before we jump into this, say that if Trey Hume, being the number 32 on the screen, is our third most advanced player, that's a problem. And this is, I talked to you about this, the Trey Hume being the inverted sort of fullback that moves in the midfield. Is my issue with this is I don't think Trey Hume is good enough with the ball. And there's no knock on Trey Hume. It's just he's a right back. He is not good enough on the ball to justify the license of him being one of our most advanced players. I mean, he's more advanced than our other two central midfielders. That, to me, is a problem because he is not good enough to be in that position. We need to figure that out, which is why we really need to move away from the 4 at the back, because I think
5 at the back against teams like Fulham.
This is a problem.
I agree, and we've seen it. Mowbray tried Gooch doing that, and he tried Hume doing that as well. I mean, I agree. It's not Hume's fault. I don't want to dig him out. The lad's been excellent, and some of his recent games have been outstanding. But the fact is, he's not a midfielder. He's not used to driving with the ball. He doesn't see passing opportunities in the same way that you do if you're playing at the back of the field with everything in front of you. And I just think that midfield, of Siddiqui, Xhaka, Hume in the middle, and then Traore on one wing and Lefebvre on the other, you just think, where's the driving runner here? There isn't one. And you need that to pull defenders of the opposition apart. Otherwise, it's very easy. And you need that to create space and to create opportunity off that player. And it's just not really there. And you can see how isolated Wilson is as a result of this. There's no connection between that midfield, which lacks pace, lacks drive, lacks creativity. And I think it really shows. And you're right. I mean, I hadn't realized just how far up he is and what the consequence of that was. But I think you're absolutely right. And I think woe betide us if we play against Bournemouth like this, because they will be watching what I think I'm about to show you anyway. And they are a better, faster team than Fulham, I think. So I think we'll be in trouble if we do that against them. Right. In any case, there you go. So, I mean, you can see what's going to happen here. They had like 42% of their stuff come down the right, and they played absolutely into that space that clearly Silva had targeted as being something that was available to us. And I have done my best here to invert both of those pass maps with that vacant area box. And I think you can see, and I don't think this is any fluke at all, that the utter focus of Fulham's play is entirely within that gap. And I think that is absolutely deliberate by them. And the goal comes from this area as well. And the problem you have is with, folding Mukiele around and Hume into the midfield is when you lose possession, you require them to vacate that space all the way back into defence. And you just gift the opposition a third of the pitch. And with somebody like Silva, who's able to say to Fulham, this is what's going to happen if we turn the ball over. This is where we play it. This is where we get up the field, and we'll have much more chance to score and be creative further up the field this way. Won't work on the other side, but we will get it here. And I think that is not a coincidence when you invert those two maps and see what's going on there. It's been something that we've thought about, and I think that really quite proves it. Now, if we can sit here and talk about that, and Silva on his international duty with players away, playing all of that stuff, can do that in one day. He's been thinking about it clearly before and during the international break. I don't see why we have an excuse particularly. I think it's a fact that Regis takes the conservative option. I'm okay with that, but he's been done by Marco Silva there completely. And make no mistake that Bournemouth and other teams will have seen the same thing and will have analysed Fulham's game and say, well, how did they utterly dominate Sunderland? Because that wasn't right. And I don't think that is really hard to figure out. So I think there's a real problem if we line up that way against Bournemouth. They have pace. If Semenyo's back and fit, there could be trouble there. And I've got just a couple more things to try and show you why I think this is really true. If I look at Renildo's heat map here, can I do that? I can. Here's Renildo's heat map. If you pop this up, this shows you where he spends most of his time. It's pretty well balanced, and there's quite a bit in the middle of the park. And if I then show you Hume's heat map, you can see how it differs. Let me just get that one up. Can I do that? I can. And here is Hume's heat map here. You might have to scroll down to put that up there. You can see there's a gap between where he was on that pass map in his most advanced position above the centre circle, and then running back when we lose possession into his right back position. There's just a gap of where there's much less engagement, and that's precisely the gap that Fulham direct most of their passing and play into. And there are just that's where he occupies his time. And if you think about where these two players on left and right are making most of their defensive actions, you see the same thing confirmed here. Here's Ronaldo's. This is where Ronaldo is doing Reinildo is doing most of his counter pressing and his recoveries. So he's having even opportunities at recovering the ball. Pretty much most of the places you would see him at various points. But if you look at, I know these are small numbers, but I'm trying to use as many different examples as possible to try and show you what I think is happening. And if you look at Hume, again, you don't see any of those counter-pressing efforts, between the centre half, the centre line, and our own 16-yard line. And I think if you take all of that and maybe go back to that or not. It's up to you. The one with the inverted box and map. You don't have to. I think people have seen it, but if they're watching, they might like to see that again. That one there. I just think that's a really smart plan by Silva. I don't think when you look at them laid next to each other that it is any accident. And I think that's pretty obvious. And I think that the game is up for 5 at the back against the team. They will exploit that transitional moment where we fold back and release the space. And if they're quick enough, and they will play into it really fast and we'll be under pressure. So that's my 2 penneth there. I'm pretty pleased with it, to be honest.
Yeah. But I think, though, watching the game, you know, and watching Sunderland in recent weeks, I think that these things were quite... I mean, we've talked about them. Like, yes, I've talked to you last week about Trey Hume not being a useful central midfielder. So I'm a bit also confused as to why the change didn't happen in-game, because in the first half, Fulham, I think, had 3 breakaways. We're playing 5 at the back, a really defensive setup, and Fulham were able to get at least 2 one-up. Kevin had a one-on-one, I remember, and I think they had another one as well. But there was a few times, I think Harry Wilson had one as well. There was a few times that happened, though, and I'm like, if we're going to play 5 at the back, there has to be defensive solidity if you're going to do that. And we didn't even look that. And I feel like there's an issue with trust, and I think this is the underlying problem. The fact is he trusts his defenders and he doesn't trust any of his midfielders outside of Xhaka and Siddiqui.
Part of the reason they broke is because I think one comes from a throw-in. I think another comes from a corner when they break fast and have good chances. Is we don't have any pace in our midfield, particularly at that point. The only person with any pace is Traore, and he's a physical midget. So I just think that, we're not going to bully anybody off the ball. If we have up for corners or long throws, there is if you can get the ball out quickly, you've got pace against people like Xhaka or Siddiqui or Hume. And if you have pace, you will beat those guys. They're not slow by any particular mark. But they're slower than who you might have as a winger up there for the opposition. Now, you can go back to the playoff final. We conceded our first goal from exactly the same sort of position where, we might have 2 people on the 16-yard line for the break, and one of them is Lefay, who's just too slow to cover Campbell on his crossfield run, and Hamer gets it across to him. So those sorts of things, I think, really bother us, and you have to make those choices. Lefay is pretty good on the left and pretty creative, and probably was one of our most creative players at that point of the day on the weekend against Fulham. But you can't ask him to be one of the last 2 men defending on the edge of the box, because he'll get beaten for pace, and chances will come. And they had chances like that. Rigg did a much better job of it, and I would have been tempted to have him on. He has defensive solidity. He's got some creativity. And a bit of pace. I think there are just lots of options. Mayenda's physical. He could have come on and done something. I just think our midfield lacked pace, lacked drive, lacked creativity. Our tactics in the wet meant that Wilson had no chance of getting onto a ball. And I think Silva has observed what we do when we've got 5 at the back and taken magnificent advantage of it. And I hope he doesn't sign a contract with them when they go down. There we are.
We've got, obviously, this weekend Bournemouth, which we're going to do a preview, so I don't want to talk about too much, but the 4 at the back surely return to that. But then we've got them 2 away games against Liverpool and Man City, where it feels like that would lend itself to the 5 at the back. I mean, I don't think the 5 at the back is dead, but I do think it needs to be rethought how it works, because I am so against Trey Hume doing the central midfield thing. I don't get it. I don't think it works. I don't think he's a good enough... I don't think he's a good enough footballer in a sense. I think he's a Premier League level player. He's not a Premier League level midfielder. He doesn't have the technical ability to do the things that I think we are asking him to do. So therefore, I'm struggling therefore to figure that out.
I would prefer to have a better, classical, I don't know how to better ways to put it, but I prefer to have a midfielder who knows how to play in midfield, who can see the game around them rather than in front of them, who knows when to drive with the ball and can pass can spray a pass or ping a pass. I prefer to have a midfielder like that who can do a bit of defending. Because Mukiele will be solid at right back, rather than have a right back come into midfield. I just think if we're always going to be forward in possession with Hume as the midfielder, if that's how we're going to attack, why not play a proper midfielder there? And I just think that would be better. But hey, look,
I agree.
there have been games when he's been excellent, and that five at the back has worked really well. Chelsea in particular, I thought Arsenal worked well, but Chelsea in particular, where Xhaka got up into the 10. And Hertrauder and Ballard were able to move in the midfield. So, I mean, it's not dead, I agree, but it was deeply frustrating. The conditions added to the frustration. I just thought we got it wrong, and Silva got it very right.
Yeah, and the thing is I think as well, you've talked a lot about what Fulham did right, but I think we also have to remember as fans that fundamentally in the Premier League, as we heard when we came up, there are no easy games, and Fulham, I think, played very well at the weekend. We did not play well, and the fact that we were able to hold in at 0-0 for as long as we did, without giving up a ton of top-level chances, despite the fact we didn't play well, I think we have to take a little bit of heart from that. But you just have to accept that sometimes the opposition is on the day better than you and has a better setup, and it is what it is. But I think there was a lot of, I don't know, maybe people frustrated because we had such a good start of the season that we've lost a game away at Fulham and maybe feeling downbeat about it. But I think we have to accept that.
I think this is a good thing, If we're getting upset because the team in 16th, we can't roll over the team in 16th place. That's kind of a good reflection on where we are. That we think we should be doing that, and we think we've got a team that can be above that. I still think we do. I'm not that fussed about this. We're in a wonderful position to be able to just say, didn't work, terrible conditions, we got it wrong, the players weren't really at their best. And it's wonderful to be able to say, okay, just put it to one side. It doesn't really matter. And I think what you said is really important, that even despite all of that, and even despite, some good, good stuff from Fulham and Silva, that we didn't get hammered. It was 1-0. And I'm really convinced that we won't get hammered this season, or if we do, it'll be a freak singular result, because Bris is cautious, and I think it's really important that you don't, for team morale and belief about what you can do and where you can be in the league. So if you play poorly, the conditions are against you, and you get the setup wrong, and you've been a bit found out, and you still only lose 1-0 against the team in 16th. I mean, this is great. We'd have taken all of that at the start of the season. So I don't think people need to worry too much. Yes, it's frustrating, but that's a sign of our refocused goals, our refocused ambition, and the fact that we can afford to just let that one go, so long as we learn from it. This is all a positive stuff. Like you say, we lost by 1. It's going to happen. There are going to be games that we dominate, and they get stolen from us by a goal. It's going to be much worse to deal with that. You'll feel robbed. We weren't robbed. We didn't deserve to win. Put it to one side, move on. I think, but all good signs. But where we are, the attitude.
Their goal.
Yes.
When I watched it, my reaction, to be fair, still my reaction right now. I feel like I'm really digging out Trey Hume today, but my criticism was Trey Hume was very slow to close down the cross. I think this is an issue that we've actually had quite a bit last season. We were really bad at closing crosses down, but I thought it was quite a lazy approach. I get it was the 84th minute. He's played internationally. He's probably is tired and all that stuff, but I expected him to close the ball. I thought the cross in was phenomenal. I think it was one of them balls that you can't really defend. I know people have criticised Roofs, but I think if Roofs comes out, I don't know if he gets it because of how good the ball is. And I think Ballard, you could maybe argue, needs to be better against Jimenez. But even then, the finish from Jimenez is so fortunate the way that it goes in. He's ended up hitting it so sort of straight that Roofs is expecting it to go in the corner, so he catches him out. But I don't know, do you assign blame? And if you were assigning blame, where would it go?
I mean, I do, but only in a sort of fairly factual sense. I don't really think you can say, oh, look, terrible stuff. But I don't really think there's any. I wouldn't be digging somebody out on Monday morning saying this is terrible, but yeah, I would. I think you can do. So I get the stuff about Hume not closing people down or people not, but that's the way we kind of sit. We sit very tight in that box, and I think the danger is people get excited about this, but the reality is, with a team that can cross a lot, maybe you should be closing them down. But you play against some teams, and if you rush out to shut him down, it can be quite easy to just have a single runner and a single pass, and all of a sudden you're in the half spaces behind that person coming out to meet you. So you have to do a job as a whole, and on a whole, we sit in a block, and we're quite happy to say you're not going to get those spaces, you're not going to get those passes inside and behind. Have a go and cross it, because we're pretty confident we'll do all right there. And we have been, and I still think that's what we'll do defensively. So I'm not sure. I think Hume is probably under instruction there not to go out and meet that too deep, because he's still quite some way out. It's a fantastic cross, by the way. He's quite deep, and in order to do that, he would, there'd be a bulge in the line. He'd leave space, and runners would go in there. I mean, that's kind of what they want. They want you to come out and meet them to do that, or at least good teams will do. So I'm not going to say it's his fault. And the cross is staggeringly good. You can't have players are not going to put crosses like that in all day. So you have to try and win them. I do think if I'm going to assign blame, I put it with Roofs. Unfortunately, as soon as that cross is hit, he looks to come out, and then he checks himself. But Ballard, who's marking Jimenez, is facing. He's looking at the ball and he's looking at Roofs, and he sees Roofs come for it, and he says, "Okay, I'll lean into Jimenez, and you can take it, and that'll be fine." And I think if Roofs had committed to that first instinct, he probably gets it. And if he doesn't, Ballard has pushed Jimenez out of the way anyway. But that half stutter in a third of a second, and Ballard goes, "Oh, okay, I've got to get to it," and it gets past him. I think balls almost never get past Ballard to the man behind, and I just think it's that miscommunication, that fraction of a second. Roofs says, "I'll come." "No, I won't." And Ballard says, "Okay, I'll lean him out." "Oh, no, I've got to go to it." And that's the only reason that Jimenez is free, and the only reason that ball gets back there. I think it's just, it's just unlucky. It's just one of those things. I think they probably afterwards would probably think, Roofs probably says, "Oh, it's annoying. I should have just gone," or "I should never be going for that, and I'm never going to," So I just think it's unfortunate. It happens. But in some sense, had he been committed, or had he never made the stutter, I think that gets defended much better by Ballard as a result. So it's just a bit of bad luck. But they deserved that. If I was a Fulham fan and they hadn't won that game, I'd be bloody annoyed. Really annoyed. They had lots of easy chances. Two free headers at the back posts, a couple of one-on-ones. Their finishing was appalling, frankly. And that's good for us as well in terms of opponents down the bottom of the pack. So I put blame on Roofs, but only very gently.
Fair enough. But obviously, when we preview the Bournemouth game, we're going to talk much more about sort of the tactical setup and how we'd approach it. Is there anything else we need to talk about for this game, or should we wrap it up?
I am happy. What was it? What's it Mowbray used to say? We'll put that in the bin and move on. Did he used to say that?
Yeah.
He basically put the points in the bag and put the losses in the bin. I can't remember what he used to do, but I'm happy to do that. So long as we don't, make the same mistakes again against Bournemouth. But that is a very different prospect, and maybe you have some different ideas about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, check out Propaganda, as that will be coming out later in the week. And we'll have our preview for Bournemouth coming up as well. Thanks everyone for watching. Please subscribe to both of our channels for more amazing-ish Sunderland content. And,
you didn't sell it.
Yeah. Well, you were the amazing, and I was the amazing-ish.
This is not true.
Check out our channels though, and drop subscribes and all that good stuff if you're not already. And we'll catch you all very. We'll catch you all very soon. Yeah, we'll catch you all very soon. That makes sense.
I'm not even going to change.
Yeah. Well, you're not actually wearing. I mean, you're wearing a very formal attire. Normally, you've got like a rock band I've never heard of.
But what you don't realise is that this is velour.
Oh, is it?
It's like a carpet.
Yeah. Are you doing that whole thing where your top half's dressed but your bottom half isn't?
You'll never find out.
Don't stand up. Don't stand up. Right. Anyway, on that note, let's call it a day.